Thank you for joining us at our virtual partners meeting. So as Maria said, just over the last kind of few, I guess it's months now, isn't it? 3 months since lockdown began. What we've been trying to do in negotiation with other DMOs across the country, but also with Visit Britain and Visit England, and directly as well with DC, in terms of trying to lobby for as much support as possible, and then to signpost people to access support. There have been challenges along the way, and I know that there's also quite a lot of our businesses and partners who've still not been able to access any support. There's still people who are falling through the gaps and unfortunately have been finding themselves ineligible, and we're using a lot of case studies in order to kind of argue the case with DCMS that they need to come up with further flexibility on some of this support. It has led, we have been one of many voices into government, but it has led to things like the extension of the furlough scheme, to the flexibility around the furlough scheme so that we can begin to bring people back potentially on a part-time basis, and to the discretionary fund, which was, for the grants that were available to tourism and hospitality businesses. A number of us were, businesses were still not eligible. B&Bs, for example, if you weren't paying business rates, or if you were of a rateable value over £51,000. Some of those, that discretionary grant is welcome, but it's not without its challenges. And I think that there's still more work to be done in terms of getting government to flex some of that guidance. We are beginning to look kind of with cautious optimism towards the 4th of July and the idea that we're going to be able to reopen our doors, which obviously is a positive thing, but we still need the specific guidance to be in place so we know, how to advise businesses that they are able to do that and do that in a safe way. So we're pushing government on the release of that as well. And also, this sector is going to be the last to open, so arguably has suffered the longest, possibly the hardest. So if there's any sector that should have potentially a repeat of grant support or other forms of longer term support, it's all part of a big lobby push that we're doing. We've also been working with the Local Enterprise Partnership, who have set up some advisory groups to look at post-COVID recovery and what interventions we believe we need to be asking central government for, but also potentially local government, or even our existing grant schemes to be able to repurpose themselves or redirect themselves to give the support that's required. And that, there was an industry roundtable that they hosted last week, and what was coming through loud and clear was that we need clarity, we need confidence in order to be able to open. And we need a longer term view of support. So whether that's a reduction in VAT, a longer term easing off of the business rates holiday, a repeat of the grant schemes, as I've just mentioned. So all of these are kind of coordinated asks that we're putting into government, both directly via Lancashire channels, if you like. Collectively, we're part of a Northwest lobby group, which is pushing government, particularly around our industry. And collectively with other destinations across the country, so as part of the overall tourism industry. And so we've tried to just, share information as soon as we've had it, and articulate it in the best way that we can, try and navigate our way through the various different pieces of guidance and information and, pieces of support as they've come through. The next step, I think, is that looking forward to hopefully reopening and being able to ideally support businesses in doing so. There's been quite a lot of talk about the potential for some form of industry standard. They won't call it a kite mark. I think there's some legal terminology that means that you can't establish a kite mark within the timelines that we have. They are referring to it as an industry standard. And we believe this has now been signed off by DCMS. So Visit Britain is going to be creating this industry standard, which is two things really. It's an online platform that you're able to go on to and both find the information that you need and kind of commit to having taken all of the relevant steps that you need to in order to open in a safe way. And then you will be given a certificate and a logo to use as a result of having gone through that process, which you are able to display and which the government will invest in promoting to consumers. So once that's live, there should be quite a big push behind it so that consumers understand what it is, realise that any business with that mark, displaying that logo or mark, whatever it turns out to be, is opening in a responsible manner and is ready and willing to welcome visitors back into their doors. We hope that both that guidance and that industry standard will be available to us from next week, because obviously we need as much notice as possible to be able to understand and implement that before we actually begin to kind of open our doors and welcome visitors back, hopefully on the 4th of July. And that's, I don't want to talk too much. That's a little bit of a run through of what we've been doing and where we're going to. As Maria said, please do pop questions in the chat box and we'll pick up anything that comes through. We're really keen to get specific instances, even if it's just an example from one business. We can feed that into DCMS and they are listening and they are trying to play these in to the government as it does update its guidance when they're able to do so. The last thing I would say is that one of the other pieces that came out of the LEP workshop from businesses was an attempt to quantify the economic impact of the difference between a 2-metre social distance and a 1-metre social distance. So those of you with bars and restaurants, I am sure, have been doing the sums in terms of how many people you would be able to get into your premises with a 2-metre social distance guidance in place. And obviously it knocks capacity down to about 25% for a lot of businesses. And that makes it much harder to be economically viable in terms of opening. So, any of you that watch the delights of the press briefings every day will have seen Alex Sharma being kind of pushed quite heavily on it yesterday. Will government review the 2-metre social distancing potentially down to 1 metre, which is the World Health Organization recommended distance, because it could have a major economic impact. And I don't think we've really yet quantified what difference that might be, but we're trying to do that in order to kind of give some extra weight to that argument to government. Obviously, it is a matter of only when it's safe to do so. We, like everybody else, was conscious that a second peak will be even more damaging to us than a slower, gentler reopening. But I think that there are businesses that simply can't open their doors at 2 metres social distancing. So if there's a chance and it's safe, scientifically safe, to reduce that, then I think we would be very supportive of that as a new government policy. So I think that's enough waffling on from me for now, but please do feel free to ask any questions offline if you want to send an email or give me a call separately, obviously also fine as well.
I'm going to start to take us through some of the initial findings from the research that we did recently. So we conducted a consumer survey over about 10 days at the end of May, just to try and gauge consumer sentiment on coming out of lockdown, how they feel about coming out and starting to visit places, and what would be their preferences and where they want to visit, and what kind of measures they want to see in place when they start going to venues. So this initial slide here, which I hope you can all see, is just some demographic information about the respondents. So, like I said, it was shared over 10 days at the end of May. That survey went out to our consumer database that we hold for Visit Lancashire, and it was shared with yourselves, our partners, and we hope you also shared it through your own channels. But additionally, we sent it through the Lancashire Chambers of Commerce, and some of the bids shared it with us. Some of the local media publications also shared it within their networks. And we used our business ambassadors as well. So it was shared with employees of some of the big employers across Lancashire. So we had the survey shared far and wide. And we got a good response with over 1,600 responses. We were really pleased with that. We've seen some of the national surveys that have been conducted that have had a smaller sample than that. So we were really confident that it's given us a reasonably robust sample on which to look at that analysis. Of the respondents external to Lancashire, over 3/4 have visited before or many times each year. So that's really great news for us as well, in terms that our audience know Lancashire and they obviously trust Lancashire as a destination as well. And of those respondents within Lancashire, we had a really good representation across all areas of Lancashire, all of the local authorities, with highest level of response of those from West Lancashire, Ribble Valley and Preston. So really good representation across Lancashire. Outside of Lancashire, again, you can see some of the figures on the slide. The Northwest region and Yorkshire were a good representation, which again is great because that's within our 1 to 2 hour drive time catchment. So really good representation there in terms of geography. This slide very quickly just shows you the age profile of respondents. Very much the most common age range responding there was 55 plus, and least representative were the younger age groups, under 20, 24 and under. So that's interesting. And we've also seen some discrepancies in the way different age demographics have responded to some of the questions. So we are drilling down more into that. Just to try and gauge, what those differences are and what age groups are looking at things slightly differently. Again, this slide just showing you the types of visitor groups. So we did ask the question, who would you normally travel with? Couples, very high response rate from couples, but also families. If you look at those next 4 bars on that graph, they're all different variations of families. So we had 27.41% across a mix of families responding. So again, a really good representation of Lancashire's typical target market. So one of the first things we wanted to gauge is some information on how consumers have behaved during lockdown and the value of online content and the type of online content that consumers have been viewing whilst they've been in isolation or lockdown. So with consumers unable to travel out and enjoy the usual range of leisure activities, we have seen a lot more engagement online. And the most popular things have definitely been ordering a food delivery from somewhere they haven't previously ordered. So we've seen a lot of creativity and innovation amongst our partners, certainly, where restaurants and pubs have started a food delivery service where they wouldn't have normally done that for takeouts. And that's really promising that people have engaged with that and really started to respond to that. Other things are live streaming or watching a previously recorded performance from a theatre, music or dance company. And that's really great, again, for the cultural sector and engaging with consumers. And then accessing educational resources. Of a lot of people like me are homeschooling and balancing everything, and the internet has been an amazing resource for that. But we've seen some really good examples of museums or animal and wildlife places that have put on really good resources that people have been accessing for that educational need as well. Other activities that people have frequently mentioned that aren't listed here include online fitness classes and videos, online shopping and quizzes. So a lot of our partners, again, some of our partners have been doing quizzes which have engaged with people, and it's a really good way of just keeping messaging out there and keeping yourself front of mind. So that's been really positive that they've been picked up well. So just moving on. So next we wanted to know what people are most likely to do once they're out of confinement. This is a really interesting question, and whilst the top responses have varied slightly in terms of order across the age demographics, these tend to be the same things at the top. So going for a day trip to an outdoor location is number one with 61.57% response rate. So you know, people are wanting to get outdoors and they're taking that advice about, you know, getting out and minimizing risk being outside. Now that we're starting to be able to meet people one-to-one as well, that's going to start to come into its own. Going for a day trip out to the coast, which you could argue is a similar thing within that. Going to a restaurant is the third highest response, and going to a pub sits there nicely as well, quite predominantly. Unfortunately, activities least appealing, as you can see there, are going to a cinema, taking a train or a bus ride out, and visiting a spa. But there is a caveat in here that's within the research, people have said, well, actually, I wouldn't normally do that activity anyway. So we just need to bear that in mind when we assess those points. Other activities, again, not listed on here, commonly stated, are things like going swimming. People seem to be really desperate to go swimming, visiting friends and relatives, and going to their own caravan or taking their own caravan away on a holiday. So those have been mentioned quite frequently as additional activities as well. We wanted to capture a measure of consumer confidence in going back out in general. And you can see from here, it's really quite a close split in terms of those who can't wait to get out straight away and those that are very cautious about rushing out and will only continue to take necessary trips. There's only a very small percentage of people who are saying that they have no plans to go out at all in the near future. And when you start to get into those, these are the kind of people who are really very hesitant and they're waiting for a vaccine before they get out, and you know, and they may be shielding perhaps. But again, this is where some of the interesting variances have come in across age groups. We've found that those 65 plus are generally quite ambitious and they want to get out soon, whereas the younger ones, and particularly, I know it's only a small sample, but those under 25 are very hesitant and then they're not quite as keen to get out. So we are continuing to interrogate that data amongst those demographics and families and couples and that sort of thing, and we'll be able to give more detail and report on that over the coming week. So this is focusing more specifically on the next 12 months, and respondents are being asked how they believe their trip-taking behaviour may change in relation to day trips, overnight stays, both domestic and overseas. So as you can see from the tables, with day trips, about 1/3 felt there'd be no change in the number of day trips they're going to take, which is, you know, is good. But under a same level of about 30% said they would take less day trips. And when you look at this data all together, with those that are going to take more day trips than usual, there's potentially a net loss in the number of day trips of around about 5.6%. So not a brilliant picture in terms of that. And similarly with overnight stays, when you bring the data together on those responses, it's showing a net loss of overnight stays of around about 11.2%. With intentions to holidays overseas, big percentages there, over half stating that they'll take less trips abroad than usual, and 3.7% saying that they will take more, and 16.3% saying they'll take the same. So a further 19% were unsure about taking overseas trips. And again, there's always a declaration of people that say they don't take that type of trip anyway. So this could offer the potential, I suppose, with the overseas visits for us to influence those intending to take less overseas trips into undertaking more domestic trips and starting to alter some of those net loss figures. So just moving forwards here. We asked a question about the types of venues that people want to visit. And the data on this is vast and the tables are huge, which is why we've just kind of got a bit of a verbal summary in there. And I'm not going to read the slide out to you, but there is undoubtedly a greater confidence in outdoor locations. And it's hardly surprising, really. Parks and gardens, small villages, towns, that sort of thing. We touched on this already, that some of the ones that are coming out lower down the list, such as cultural venues, theatres, cinemas, being less likely, have also been declared that they're not kind of venues that people would visit anyway. So we need to maybe interrogate that data a little bit more and see what else there is to find within that. And attitudes towards when people might start eating out. Again, you see a quarter of people hoping to visit a pub or a cafe once confinement's over. That was kind of coming out as one of the things that people really wanted to get out and do. But just under a third planning to wait a few weeks and just see what happens, I guess, and check out the landscape. I think accommodation, there's some variances in terms of national perceptions here, whereby they appear to be more propensity to stay in serviced accommodation, with over half of the respondents, well, almost half of the respondents saying they would consider a stay between June and September, and 62% who will plan a visit from October onwards. So again, just looking at that delay in when people are going to come out. And this compares to 20% of respondents who said they would stay once lockdown ends, and 31% who would wait several months before considering a stay in a hotel. So again, a real mixed response on that, and we just need to have a look at that in some more detail. Distances that people are prepared to travel. So this is particular to a day trip. So people are pretty willing to travel some distance, over 50 miles for a day trip. Which is great when you think about that 1 to 2 hour drive time sample that we have in the research. That's really positive. And then again, willingness to travel for an overnight stay. So even further, people are prepared to travel, which is really, really positive. So the preferred type of destination for a holiday, rural coastline, again, was most popular with 65%. And again, you can see in there countryside and villages closely following, mountain hills and seaside towns, all giving a higher response rate in the kinds of places that people want to visit. And again, great for Lancashire because we have all of that to offer, so we need to capitalise on that. And I think I've just got a note here actually that someone's given me that says results vary somewhat from the consumer rankings nationally, whereby one of the most notable differences was rural coastline, considered by just under a quarter of consumers nationally. So there is some interesting discrepancies there with some of the consumer sentiment tracking surveys that Visit Britain have done. I'm just moving on. So the perceived safety of venues. So in terms of locations and venues, again, there's definitely greater confidence in outdoor locations than indoor ones. Parks and gardens, visiting small villages or towns, outdoor attractions, including farm parks, were perceived as the safest type of place to visit. Also, consumers keen to visit retail venues, including farm shops, delis, food halls, as well as non-retail establishments and markets once lockdown has ended. Again, theme parks and indoor cultural venues, theatres, cinemas performing less on this response rate, and public transport as well being something that people are not particularly keen to do. This was a really interesting question. So we posed a number of measures that we are anticipating are going to come out in government guidance. Of course, we still don't know what that's going to look like. But we posed some potential measures and just trying to gauge what actually makes a difference, what is meaningful to the consumer in what they want to see. And and some really, really strong responses in terms of, you know, what people want to see, whether it's essential or somewhat important. Very, very important or somewhat important were the actual responses on that. So you can see there the ones that have been listed with over a 90% concern around it being very important or somewhat important. And these are the things that we need to think really carefully about how our venues deliver to make sure these are very visible and consumers have that confidence that what they're seeing and what they're experiencing is a safe environment for them. Rachel touched on it before there in terms of Visit England's standard, their safety or secure standard. We asked the question about whether people want to see a national standard, would they be happy with a local accreditation on it, who's not bothered. You can see quite clearly in the results there that over half of respondents want to see a national standard to demonstrate that the businesses are implementing COVID safe precautions, and we will be filtering that through to you as and when we get further updates on it, as Rachel's mentioned. And we believe that's going to be a free standard from Visit England, so we would encourage as many of our partners as possible to involve, to take that on board and be proud to display that standard. There have been a lot of questions around how that's going to be administered, how it's going to be governed, and again, we're waiting for guidance on that. So we will make sure that that is passed through to you. That really is a very quick whirlwind of the research that we've had. There is huge depth in that research document. And we will be publishing the report in full, so you'll have access to it as well as these slides towards the end of the week. So we'll make sure that that's communicated out. I will hand over now to Vicky, who is going to just talk through some of the campaign activity that we've got going on. All right, Vicky.
I'm unmuted. Hello, everybody. I'm Vicky. I'm going to talk through some of the marketing activity that we've been undertaking whilst we have been in lockdown and what we're working on at the moment. Like many of you, our business as usual activity has gone completely out of the window because obviously we're far from usual times at the moment. We've been really focusing on ways that people can enjoy Lancashire from their own homes. So Bring Lancashire Home, as it was called, brought together everything that you can do within the county from your own home. So this has kind of evolved as time has gone on. And so initially there was lots of very, very local walks on there. And then as people were allowed to go a little bit further for their walks, we did some 5-mile walks and kind of cycling activity and things in there as well. It's quite different to some of the stuff that we would normally do because it's hyper-local. We've found that we've had more people from the local area looking for access to things. So we've included lots of content on there from local restaurants that are delivering food very locally to their business, food and drink suppliers that perhaps people like Holmes Mill and their food hall that have been offering a click and collect service that's been featured on there, and the retailers in Blackburn Market have been featured on there, and as well as our gin distilleries and people like that who have an online retail presence. We've also had fun learning experiences. So we've had some stuff on there from Clitheroe Castle that have had some downloads and educational resources, just things to keep the little ones entertained. The Great Outdoors Indoors has been virtual tours and things that have gone on at places like Blackpool Zoo, where you can have a look at all the animals. And we've also, in the Culture Tea Couch section, been doing things like tours of some of our great houses, and Samlesbury Hall, and also looking at the collections of the Harris and Gawthorpe Hall and any other kind of cultural activity that's been going on. So it's been quite popular. The most popular has been around food and drink deliveries, and I'll come on to another bit about that shortly, because we're continuing this campaign on. So if any of you have got businesses that fit into any of these sections and are offering something a bit different, then please, send your information over so that we know about it and can continue to feature it. One of the most popular sections has been the quiz. So we have released a quiz every week on our social media. So our Ultimate Lancashire quiz, this was one of the posts that went out about it on Facebook, which reached nearly 3,000 people. So we've been doing these weekly. They've taken different themes. So one was Ultimate Lancashire, one was about forests and great outdoors. We've had one about heritage, and then we've also had the Lancashire pub quiz. So for the pub quiz, one of the examples is Jocelyn from Seafood Pub Company did a video outside the Ashton Arms in Downham, and then people had to answer questions that were linked to clues that she'd given in the video. And again, if any of you want to get involved in any of that quiz activity, then you still can do, and you can do that from your venue. Just get in touch with us or drop us a note in the comments, and we can respond to that.
Welcome to the Ashton Arms in Downham, the Good Pub Guide's Dining Pub of the Year 2020. We have the most wonderful views of Pendle Hill and St Leonard's Church, which dates back to Saxon times. We have 12 bedrooms through the village in the surrounding post office and cottage buildings. We're known for our seafood specials and pub classics. The village has been used as a film set a number of times due to there being no road markings or overhead cables. Whistle Down the Wind, Born and Bred, and The Secret of Crickley Hall were all filmed here.
So we've moved on from the lockdown and bring Lancashire home to see you soon safely. Nice bit of alliteration there. And the online portal for that mirrors the lockdown content that we've had. So again, there's things about people going out on walks. There's things about people looking at where they can buy food or have food delivered. And really, the whole message around safety is something that has come up and is coming up time and time again. It's not just about making sure that our businesses are safe places for people to visit, but it's about visitors coming here responsibly. So we've been doing a lot of work over the past couple of weeks with Lancashire Fire and Rescue Service, talking to them about how we can push their messages out and push their messages further about not taking barbecues up onto the moors and the damage that does for wildlife. We've been working with the AONBs as well around their messaging and really ramping up stuff around the countryside code and how people that wouldn't necessarily be out walking know to shut gates and keep dogs on leads. And I think the biggest one that we're all facing is about taking rubbish home with you, but really trying to make people to be responsible for themselves and to respect and protect the county, because the last thing that we want is for the moors to be on fire and people not to be taking their rubbish away. So we've really been reinforcing that along with this safety message. So the premise of this campaign was quite simple. We had a download on our website so that people could download it, print it out, frame it, personalise it with what they wanted to write in the middle, and then take a picture of it from their venue. We had 50 people initially submitted things as part of this. We put press releases out about it as well, and had really good pickup in the media. There's been articles that have been published about it, and Rachel was on Northwest Tonight talking about kind of welcoming people back as well. So the concept for it is quite simple. The assets still are on our website if you wanted to download it, and we're continuing to push it out through our social, but we will also be doing a phase 2 of this video. So I'll just show you, as if by magic, how the video looks. So that was the See You Soon Safely campaign. Like I said, there is a phase 2 that is coming, which will have the other businesses that have submitted. And if you want to do one for your business as well, then you can download a form from our website, print it out, fill it in, take a picture with your business and send it over to us. As Rachel alluded to, we're working at the moment on our recovery plans as well, and as soon as we're in a position to be able to communicate those with you, then we will be doing. I think that was everything that I wanted to cover.
Thanks, Vicky. And we've just published in the chat group there the link to access the See You Soon Safely campaign opportunities on the Marketing Lancashire website, so you'll be able to access that and see the link in the chat group. And now really it's a case of taking any questions that anyone has. I know we've had just a couple of questions from Sue at Spot On whilst we've been chatting, which I think we've already addressed. Sue, I'm just trying to find you to unmute you. If there's anything else you want to put in there, I think you were keen to know if there was anyone else from the arts sector here in this meeting, were you, Sue?
Hi there, hello. Yes, I was just, it's really nice to see you, and I found the survey just really, really useful, where Spot On Lancashire obviously works with village halls and libraries across the county, putting on events in small spaces. So we have the same issues as the hospitality sector in terms of, you know, you can't bring large groups of people together in a small space. So I'm all over research and surveys at the moment. So that's why I was being really animated on your chat going, why is this and what do you know about that? But you've answered everything, and it's really, really useful. And I've shared an arts sector national survey with everyone as well, because the issues are the same. What will people pay? What do people need to see in place in order to come out and spend some money, which is what this is all about, really, isn't it?
Great, thanks, Sue. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
There's no more questions in the chat group, but I have had some questions sent through to me previously. But has anyone else got any burning questions? Just flag up and we can talk through some stuff. No. Okay, so just going to go through to some of the questions that we received before the meeting then. I think one of the questions here has come from somebody who runs a seasonal B&B owner on the coast. No income so far this year. COVID has been catastrophic for us. Do we believe that there's going to be a domestic tourism boom post-lockdown that might help businesses survive? Rachel, I'm going to come to you to respond on that. I can unmute you.
If only, I guess, is the answer. I think that, you know, there was in the early stages of lockdown and kind of dealing with this, I think there was, Visit Britain certainly had quite a bolshy attitude to the fact that there was going to be a huge domestic tourism boom that would somehow potentially save the sector once we had a chance to reopen. I think they very much softened their messaging over the last couple of weeks in light of some of the consumer insight. And I think it's really useful for us to have our local survey and compare that to some of the national ones, because I really do think there'll be regional differences. And I think that as we begin to ease out of lockdown, one of our first things will be, you know, getting people to explore their own doorsteps and even holiday on their own doorsteps. Hopefully we'll all be so sick of our own four walls that we'll be really, really keen to get out and stay in somebody else's four walls, as long as we're confident that it's safe to do so. So I do think it is the only opportunity we have to recover some of this season, domestic tourism, arguably, certainly if the quarantine stays in place. And I think that Lancashire's really, really well placed for that, actually, you know, because we are 80% rural, because we have an awful lot of high quality accommodation, but that does give that kind of self-catering freedom, perhaps. And just because we're a welcoming and friendly county that has been less kind of severe, I suppose, in our stay away messaging. We've said stay home please until it's safe to come back. And we do hope that people will begin to come back. So, you know, for the B&B owner, you know, absolutely feel their pain. We've had so many examples of people that, you know, because they didn't pay business rates, because their home was their business, you know, they weren't really eligible to any of the grant funding. And that is a big gap that we hope's been filled potentially by the discretionary business grant support scheme. But yes, I hope that people will begin to both do the day trips and then ease themselves into overnight stays. But we're being very, very strong in our feedback back to the government that they are not to think that the sector's somehow going to be able to bounce back immediately with a domestic tourism boom. We've lost half the season. We could lose more. With social distancing, a lot of businesses may be able to open but won't get the economic impact that they normally would. Their cafes might not be open immediately, their bars, you know, all those extra elements that drive the extra revenue that businesses need. So we're, you know, we want to take advantage of everything that we think we can get, and also lobby for as much support as possible, because we really aren't going to be back on an, you know, regular keel, I think, next year.
Thanks, Rachel. I think there's another one here for you as well. I spotted a second ago. Yeah, I'm worried my business has been left behind because I'm not very good at technology. What help is there for me?
Okay, me again. Well, there is help. There are funding streams available. It depends what your need is. There's a digital skills partnership which is running a pilot in Lancashire. I think there's 7 across the country, and they are able to provide access to digital skills support. There are also organisations like EKM, which is based in Preston, who have set up an a local online sales system. So the idea is, if you were a business that used to sell, you know, through farmers markets or local events or, you know, whatever it might be, and didn't have an online sales facility, they can provide you with a free platform in order to kind of sell your wares online. And we've asked them whether that might be, you know, you might be able to convert that, if you like, to become a ticketing platform, because quite a lot of attractions, I think, require people to book in advance or, you know, ticket their availability, may now need to start offering time slots, even if they're not paid for slots. So there's a lot of opportunities around things like that. The other thing I would say is that Boost, which is a Lancashire's business support service and growth hub, since the pandemic hit, they've shifted their business model. They used to really only be able to provide support for what they term business to business organisations, which meant that most tourism and hospitality businesses weren't eligible because we count as B2C. But they have been through their Ask for Help campaign, and they've now merged that into Boost Your Recovery. They are able to provide a lot of help and guidance. And if you go to the Marketing Lancashire COVID page, there's signposting to all of these places, so that you can have a sense of, you know, what might be available to help in that digital skills side of things. I think I've noticed a question as well from Eleanor about opportunities, arts and heritage venues to work together. Eleanor, can we unmute Eleanor?
Eleanor is unmuted.
Hi everyone. It's just thinking about ways of working together between various organisations and what is the best way to sort of communicate with each other. What I'm thinking is, because of the grounds that we have available, I'll say we're from Horton Tower, that we could sort of make it available for staging and things, and work together with theatres to make outdoor events possible for everybody, and just see whether there are funding pots for all organisations to dip into. That's where my brain is going, but I don't know if this is the right forum to have those sort of discussions or share ideas of that sort.
Thank you, Eleanor. I think absolutely, and it'd be interesting to see if Sue from Spot On has got a view on this. But I think that, you know, there is. Oh, she does have a view. Talk to me.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I will unmute whatever I need to do next, but I am happy to talk to people because I'm definitely looking into that, and but I need more acts, really.
Well, we can certainly put you in touch with Sue. Sue, are you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, happy to talk to anyone. We're being approached by lots of artists who are thinking creatively around social distancing and performance, and outdoor work is going to be the first phase that's possible. I was talking to someone the other day who wants to sing outside old people's homes and things like that.
But like Rachel said, if anybody has any concerns, anything they want to address with us, have a chat to us about, we will obviously do what we can to help anytime. So please just drop us an email into the team at Marketing Lancashire. We're all working remotely. It works really well. We're still here for you. So please do keep talking to us. But thank you again for coming along and joining us and listening to what's been happening so far. And please do take care. Thanks very much.